The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
We are live.
Good evening, listeners. Thank you for joining us. So glad to be here with you all. And technology can be technology, folks. So one of the things I want to share with you is that we can't limit technology and we can't live without technology. So it's Monday evening and a lovely evening because I want to share today one of our authors. She has been a #1 best-selling author for 5 days straight. And the power of your story is just so phenomenal. It's amazing. So if you have a story within you, just don't think that it doesn't matter. It's important to get it out there. And when you get it out there, the impact is tremendous. So I want you to ask yourself the question, what are you doing to drive the impact for yourself and for people around you and for strangers? So one of the things I'm going to request for y'all to do is give just 1 hour, just 1 hour a month without expecting anything in return. And think about it, if 100 million people did that in US alone, we would have 100 million hours. And thank you to those who have supported us in getting a copy of our books, Expert to Influencer, The Entrepreneur's Garden, and other of my books, because the profits from my books are going to entrepreneurs impacted by COVID-19. So thank you for your support. So appreciate each and every one of you. And today we have a wonderful guest, Sepi. Welcome, Sepi.
Thank you, Divya.
So
Pleasure to be here.
Oh, pleasure to have you. So Sepi Djavaheri is somebody who knows how to light up grass movements. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I work at UJ Federation of New York, and I am originally from Iran. And in 1979, we had the Iranian Revolution, and being a religious minority, my family and I, with hundreds of thousands of us, moved to different parts of the world. So I worked for my formative years in Germany. and then eventually made the journey to Los Angeles and now here in New York. And it's been a very interesting journey in terms of identity in particular.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned about moving, but before that, do you recall any moments or any moments in your childhood that left you a lasting impact?
Absolutely. I think that when your childhood is disrupted and you're displaced, things aren't as easy as perhaps when I look at my children who've been living in the same place and same community since they were born, right? So my identity became to the forefront, right? I'm this Persian Jewish girl in Germany in a Western culture trying to navigate between so many different identities. And so that really was a real aha moment for me as to what does it mean when you're the other, when you're always the other in the room. And that was something I've been grappling with for many, many years. And today it's been only an asset professionally for me. But there were times in my life where it was quite disruptive.
Mm-hmm. And I just pray that, we would all be in such a place that people would not have to leave their countries and be displaced or anything like that. And just if you want to move different countries, it's another matter. You're doing it out of your choice, not of desperation. So I feel for you. And Sepi, can you share with us, at what age did you move over here?
So when I was 12, we moved to the United States. And to me, that was an incredible moment in my life because, and I always say that oftentimes immigrants are the most patriotic because I came to a country that with open arms welcomed us. And to be the other is okay in the US, at least from the lens that I'm looking at. I know that there's so many different perspectives of what the United States looks like for people. But for me, I can say that it you can find your own niche in the United States in a way that I couldn't in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. No, that's beautifully said that you came here and it's okay to be other because there are a lot of people coming from different countries, and just the principle of this country, the foundations that it's laid on is beautiful and welcoming to people from all across the globe. So Seppi, you were 12 years old. Here you were, you had experienced two different cultures. What was it that you found different as a teen, and what did you grapple with during those initial years?
I think that the identity for me of being a woman was um, incredibly powerful when I moved to the US. I come from a traditional culture and there's so much beauty to it. And there's also areas that this, in my opinion, still requires growth. And when I came to the US, I ended up in a feminist high school. And it just very ironic. They had the only women's studies program in any high school in the United States. So I realized that the potential of what I could do is just unbelievable. I can be and do whatever I want. And so I was able to take the beautiful aspects of my own personal culture, but also be a bit of a disruptor and say, you know what? I'm going to go full force with the women's advocacy and activism and really embraced it.
Mm-hmm. So as you moved through the teenage years, where did you find yourself in your early 20s, late 20s?
So I found myself always gravitating towards working in communities with those who were disenfranchised or almost wanted to lift their voices. And it was almost like this natural reaction that, you know what, I understand what it's like to have a quiet voice. And how can I help amplify it? So that's really where I found myself going in my 20s and 30s.
And when you talk about a quiet place, can you expand on that?
Can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah, so you said that, you found a quiet place and you wanted to help others find their voice. So where was that stemming
Yes.
from?
Yes. So I guess what I'll do is I'll fast forward a little bit to the work that I've been doing today and how that relates to the concept of bringing out the voices of the voiceless is that oftentimes when we look at looking at leadership or looking at people in power, we look for the big voices. We immediately gravitate to those that have a large voice. But there are times when you know that they're there. You've heard about them, but they're quiet, but they're very powerful in their own respective communities. And that's where I go and that's where I look. But it's not an easy process to find them. It requires a lot of digging in order to do that.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what was you found yourself connecting with people who you wanted to give voice to, but as a career, what would you say was your passion and what did you grew up into?
So my passion was really to work with communities that were really hyper local communities that you could mobilize the communities on these days when you think about mobilizing and grassroots voice, it's really about going hyper local. So I find myself in this situation where I had heard of a community of a religious community in Long Island where, the men had very powerful voices and were very well known in the public sphere. Yet the women also were incredible forces. However, their voices tended to be a little more on the private sphere or not on the same higher altitude. So I found myself in this situation where, like, how can I go in there when I'm not even from the community and try to elevate voices? And that itself was a whole process to do, which I can share with you in more detail, but you let me know where you want me to head with that.
Absolutely. So tell us, who is Sepi as an individual? We
Who
have
is
heard
Sepi?
that yes, you have talked about that you gravitate towards women and giving people voices when they don't have a voice. But as a person, how would you describe yourself? Not just titles or anything like that.
Right. I would describe myself as somebody who has tenacity. I just don't give up. And I don't necessarily take no for an answer. So whatever I'm doing, if I see that, you know what, this is something that I really need to do something about, whether it's my role to do it or not, I feel like I'm going to stand up for that and advocate for that. Perhaps because when we left Iran, it wasn't that anybody was advocating for us. We had to flee. And we left and we were on our own. We were individuals. We were displaced. We were refugees. And for me, throughout my life, it's been that I'm going to be that advocate.
Mm-hmm. And I can see your passion. That's the core of who you are. So share with us. You talked about men having a little bit higher position than women. How did you get inside the community? Because it's always hard when you mentioned that you are not part of the community. So there are a lot of people who want to get into the communities. And what happens is that some communities, and I'm not talking about any one community, it can be any community you think about it, and especially if you're an outsider, especially if you're coming from another state or another, even if you're from the same city, but if you don't belong to the inner circle, it's very hard to break in. So talk about your experience, and also if somebody else is trying to do what's about it.
So for me to break into a community, I never go in as just myself. I go in with trusted partners who are from the community that I already know. Those are individuals that trust me and will open that door for me to go in. And once I'm there, I like to always, everything is about relationships, right? It's about building trust. And it's about me one-on-one meeting with each person that I've heard of or I've been referred to who has displayed leadership qualities, who is an influencer in her own or his own way. And once I've built that one-on-one trust, once I've built that friendship, I would say, for me, in the end, you really have to like the person and they have to like you. It can't just be a business transaction. And once we've gone through that stage, then that's when you bring everybody together and you work from there.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense, because whether you're doing business with people, whether you're interacting, trust is the first currency that you build with them. You show that you're going to do something for them, and it's not just, you're not just out there to get the benefits for yourself. So share with us your journey. How did you break into the community and where it has led to?
So what happened was that I was working, this is about a religious community in Long Island. And as I mentioned, I began to meet one-on-one with the women leaders, and women leaders who, it's interesting, the one woman leader I spoke to, who's the most well-known in the community, she said to me, Sepi, in the 40 years that I've been in this community, us women, so-called influencers, have never come together to meet. And when she said that to me, I said, okay, this is where I'm going to come in, the advocate. And this is where, I'm just going to be a little bit of a gentle bulldozer almost. And I brought them together. And the first time we all met, I said to them, of course, I'm representing an organization. It's not like I'm just there because of me. I said, can you imagine the social capital that's in this room and what you can do as a group of influencers rather than on your own? And they looked at me like I'm some odd person, like, why did she invite us? Why are we here? But you know what? We kept talking, people shared ideas, and they decided to come again. And in between those two meetings, I had called every single person who was in that first meeting and talked to them one-on-one and really listened to them and validated them. So the second meeting comes along. At this point, I have my own one-on-one relationships with them. They've been heard. They've began thinking about, maybe there's something to this. Second meeting, the women were, you know what, let's sit down and talk about what's going on in our community. What are the issues? What are the trends? What are the challenges? And fast forward, Divya, this is now a year and a half later. These women have become the pillars as a force, as a massive unified force. They've had 3 events to address specific issues in the community. The first event they held, 550 people attended. The second event during the pandemic, they had 450 people on Zoom. And their last event, just a few weeks ago, they had 650 participants attend their symposium. And at this point, their potential is exponential. And sometimes, you need somebody to come in and activate the voices. It's not that I'm the talent there, I'm not, but I'm the activator.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned something that you were in a room with these powerful women influencers, and they were influencers in their own right, but they had not come together. And it happened a few times, quite often, where women are working on their own. So, based on your experience, what is it that keeps women from getting together?
You know, I mean, I'm going to speak for this group in particular. I think they were so busy just trying to help their community. It didn't even occur to them that they should be working together. It just wasn't part of their thinking because they're too busy just giving and giving and giving. And sometimes maybe women don't even realize their ability, their influence, their capability in the way that they should. Like when I think about this group, I always say they're humble leaders. They're just so humble. There's so much humility. And sometimes maybe humility keeps you at a distance from coming together. I can say that specifically for this group.
Absolutely. I mean, we have seen the power of women in past several years where they have come together for so many different things. And the reason I wanted you to explore that was because, yes, on one hand, we have so many women, thousands of women coming together, and at the same token, you may find pockets where women may be so busy taking care of their families and not realizing their power. So what you've mentioned is that sometimes it can be humility, and sometimes it's just not knowing the power you exude. And regardless, whether it's men or women, whoever it is, when you realize the power you have and you come together, it definitely transforms the direction things can take and the impact it can drive. So can you share with us that as an initiative, how did they bring so many women together at an event?
So that's a great question. What's interesting is that this is the perfect example of humility, right? They had no idea that so many women follow them. Mm-hmm. So how did they bring it? It was effortless for them. They basically highlighted it in their social media posts, in their email groups, and literally with a snap of a finger, within 1 week, they had 450 women for one event. So how did they do it? Effortlessly, because for years they've had this following without ever acknowledging they had a following.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned effortlessly, but they must have taken some actions, done something to pull them together, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. In terms of their own background, yes, these are women who are religious. They're religious leaders in the sense that they're partners with their husbands in their community. So on a weekly basis, prior to even convening this group of women influencers, they've been meeting with the women in their communities, helping them in different aspects. Then we have, for example, there's an editor in the group, there's a famous doctor, there's blogger. So many of them day to day are in communication with community members. There's educators, principals of day schools. And so they already had the community to tap into because of their professions and their backgrounds.
And what was the mode of communication that they used to communicate? You mentioned blogger and all that. So if somebody were tapping into their community, what seemed to work well for y'all?
So we definitely had the editors and bloggers. So they were able to do real mass dissemination of any information that needed to be shared. They were social media mavens, so they were very good at using the Facebook channels in particular. And their religious, right? These are these are individuals who are very much connected to their faith institutions. And so that's an area that they use to really mobilize their community members.
And as a result of coming together, can you share with us what initiatives have been taken and what are the future plans?
So one of the biggest issues that came about is that the community felt that despite the fact that they were so spiritual, it seemed like there was some sense of feeling disillusioned. You know, this pandemic has really, really taken its toll on us emotionally. And it's very hard for us to see the silver lining. Like, where is the positivity in everything? So they started this initiative called the Power of Positivity. And they started to bring together people to hear the same women influencers speaking about positivity and healing and gratefulness. I know we use the word grateful all the time now, and it's become somewhat of a cliche, but it's a reality that we need more than ever to be grateful, right? So this became, that last event they had was called the Power of Positivity, 650 people. The event ends. Since then, women have been getting emails and text messages and phone calls. We need more of this. We want more of this. So now they've started a program called Prisms of Positivity. And bi-weekly, they're going to be having seminars for their women community members to come and hear and heal, really, to just purely heal and let go of that negative energy that's in many of our communities now.
So you talked about disillusionment. Let's explore that a little bit. When you talk about that, what was showing up for people and in what areas people were impacted?
I think what was happening is that even in the best of communities, Divya, and we're looking at, you know, we always say now the village is gone. We used to have the village, and, you know, communities have become individualistic. Even in the best of the villages, which would be this community, they were feeling alone and they were feeling lonely, and that they needed to come together. And in order to have this energy of positivity, you first have to heal. You have to connect with your community members. And then the next phase is the positivity.
So you mentioned about connecting with other members of the community. How is that being implemented?
You mean in terms of the women connecting with other members of the community? So basically, they are now forming their own mini groups. Like the influencers have now tapped into their own, almost like, I don't want to call it groupie. I don't like that word, but people who really follow them, right? So the influencers are influencing others now. It's almost like this ripple effect. And I think what we're going to begin to see in this community is a whole new force of younger women who are going to begin to take the lead to help their own community members. So I'm beginning to see that this group, they're becoming more of the matriarchs.
And when you talk about the younger women taking the lead, it's all about empowering other people, whether it's younger generation, younger women, younger men, to become leaders. And what initiatives you all have taken, or what can you propose for people to keep on empowering younger generations and helping them become and emerge as leaders?
It's a very good question. It always starts by listening to them, listening to those who, I always say, the untapped voices. You're always going to find those in the room that are the loudest. And that doesn't mean they don't have anything of importance to say, But I always gravitate towards the quiet ones. Let's hear from the quiet ones. Listen to the younger generation one-on-one, wherever you are, whatever profession you have or don't have, but wherever you come into contact with a younger person, truly tap into them. And sometimes that is just the beginning, the seed, the very seed of beginning to empowering them to speak and for them to begin thinking, what is important for me to do? And somebody is here to listen to me if I have something of importance that I want to do or I want to participate in. And I think it starts from there more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's like
Listening and connecting.
Yeah, it's basically some of the more unorthodox approaches to seeking empowerment. It's not always in the very mainstream places that you would think you have to go to.
Definitely listening and connecting with people, basic things, and yet we forget. Let's go back to the time when you mentioned that initially you had your identity formation as one of the things that you may have had some struggle with. So can you share with us what struggles were those and how you overcame and where you are right now?
So I think one of the interesting aspects for me was how do I manage my cultural background, which is very Middle Eastern, and how to be able to live within a Western culture. And how can I take those Western ideas and ideologies and have it live within the Middle East, coupled with the religion, right? Coupled with the gender aspect. So there were many different forces. And then, that was always something that I grappled with. I guess you could say it's cognitive dissonance, if you want to take the psychology term. And my younger years, that was much more evident. And I'm going to fast forward and bring you to 30 years later. I finally joined this synagogue. And I find this amazing rabbi named Rabbi Tara Feldman. And one day she called me and she said, Sepi, I want you to speak at our high holiday services. And I said, what for? She said, I just want people to hear your story. And I said, what story? What's the big deal about my story? She said, no, come and speak. So I said, okay. So I sat down and I wrote and wrote and wrote. I'm like, my God, it looks like I have some story that I didn't even know I had a story. So high holiday service approaches. There are 1,000 people in the congregation. I get up there and I share my story. And I have to tell you, Divya, it was definitely one of those moments in my life that I will always remember. People cried. People came up to me afterwards. They emailed me. They called me. I told my husband, my God, I feel like a celebrity. I should wear sunglasses and a baseball hat when I go out. But what happened was that she gave me a voice. She told me that what you've experienced and where you've been and everything you're talking about matters, that you have a voice. And that moment, I realized that this one person, this one rabbi was able to activate me, right? She gave me a voice. And I suppose that what she did, I have taken on now in doing in my work with others, because I've seen what it means to gently push somebody and say, hey, you have something there. You have the potential. I see it in you, and I'm going to challenge you.
So that said, sometimes, people may be migrating from other countries or they may be even in first generation. So currently, as I was mentioning earlier on about one of the recent books that we released, it's of an Asian American. She's second generation and she still talks about how she balanced out and how that blend of different cultures can be tough. So can you share a story or two from your personal, like how did you blend it?
How did I blend it?
As far as like cultures are concerned.
What I found is that I realized that I'll never be fully part of anything, that my identity, that I'll always be somewhat of the other, and that I can tap into so many different people in my life for different reasons. Like I can be with the feminists to tap into my feminist side. I can be with the traditional Middle Eastern to tap into that. I can be with the activists. It doesn't have to be that I have to have this cookie cutter identity, nor do I care for it anymore. Maybe there was a time in my life I wanted to fit in, but it's at this point for me, being out of the box is very much welcoming, more than ever before, especially in today's America that we see, that the kaleidoscope of a human being is very much welcomed, and that we don't have to fit that ideal, whatever it is we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, do you have a personal experience where you took one culture and the other culture, and you're able to still retain your identity and still have that experience that it's okay to be who I am?
I think that's exactly in the profession that I'm in, I'm able to do it because I am working with a community. I mean, the organization I work with, UJ Federation, is a Jewish-based organization. So, interestingly enough, it's a religion that I've had my own challenges with, particularly when I was a teenager. And to think that I've come full circle in life and I'm working for an organization, a Jewish organization, yet, if I want to be a wild activist, I can be. If I want to be the traditional one, I can be. Our organization is very much open to different perspectives and different ways of operating. So I've been able to bring all my identities into the job.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what you're saying is that it's okay to not limit yourself to one thing. You can be part of many and yet remain true to who you are.
Yes, absolutely. And to be okay with judgment, to be okay that if you're not going to fit the bill, just accept the judgment that comes with it. And it's okay. Right?
People will judge you. And as they say that if somebody is not liking you, you're doing something right. You're following your heart.
Exactly.
You're blazing your own
Exactly.
trail. Mm-hmm. So going forward now, what are your plans and what are you thinking of doing in the next few years to come?
Continuing with the path of lifting the voices of those that need it. Currently, I'm working on a new project on older adults in isolation. And when we think of the other, well, talking about a community that needs a voice are the isolated older adults in our community, and that people are dying from loneliness. And what is our role in that? What is our role in this? And so I'm working now with local community-based organizations. We're working even with the Nassau County Police Department. How do we identify older adults? How do we listen to them? How do we bring out their voices? What are their needs? Who are they? And we're going to go straight to them to hear from them what they want, and that the leadership needs to come from them.
I like what you're saying, that leadership needs to come from them that just because they're alone doesn't mean they, again, cannot get together and congregate. And it can be Zoom. And especially now with vaccines being available to our senior citizens, more getting together, and even it's outside or inside can happen. And what do you foresee the future for that?
For the future of older adults?
Your older generation getting together.
So I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see that they're going to use technology more. They've had no choice but to do that. And there's now many availabilities for training for technology through OATS, Older Adults Technology Service, that's providing free services for older adults to use that. I think you're going to see smaller groups of older adults getting together. We're launching a program called the Village model, which is bringing older adults together to create their own villages that's made by them, right? So it's not top down, it's them coming together, them designing what they want. And so you're going to begin to see micro clusters of older adults coming together. But one thing we know for sure, they don't want to be alone, and they're going to go out of their way to find community more than ever before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they should not be alone, because these are the years doesn't mean they cannot make full life of it and have a good time and come together. And I like what you're saying is that them taking the initiative, them taking that step forward and designing the way they want it, because ultimately it is about their choices, their desires. So that's a great initiative you're taking. And so as we come to a close, what are a couple of things you'd like to share with our audience that they can do in their communities to help others, to lift them up and give voices?
What I recommend is that if there's a particular issue that you're really interested in, you reach out to your favorite community leader, whatever that means to you, what a community leader is. You reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested in hunger and food insecurity. I'm interested in lonely older adults. I'm interested in whatever. And that person will direct you the right path. But make sure you're reaching out to that right local influencer for them to guide you.
No. Great tip. So if people wanted to reach out to you, where can they connect with you? And if there's anything else you want to share with our listeners?
I just wanted to thank you, Divya. I'm a great admirer of you and really enjoy your podcast. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thank you for joining us. And you want to share anything about your contact information or?
I will, yes, of course, I can be reached at Sepi at ujafedny.org, and I will share my information. Divya, you can share it also if you want on your social media posts.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, Sepi, and I really wish you all the best in the coming years, that you're able to help uplift other people. And thank you for your kind words. And
take care.
Thank you for doing all the work that you're doing, because it's important, very important.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, Divya. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you, listeners, for joining us, and greatly appreciate you. Without you, we would not have the show, because you are the best. And as Sepi mentioned, get involved in the community, whatever cause that's near and dear to you. Reach out, help lift others, and give people voices, whether even if it's in your own family, friends, or community, neighborhood. So I do want to thank you for joining us as always, and thank you, Rebel. for making this show possible. Until next time, be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.